Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. Deontay WIlder has potentially stuck his foot in his mouth this time, making some comments about Anthony Joshua as he does, but in the process, he's opening himself up to some criticism. So he's said that Joshua had only got his name by beating an inactive and beaten guy. So there's some things with these quotes and the comments that he's saying. So I'll go through the quotes. And he's also taking a crack at Joseph Parker. So yeah, I kind of think that WIlder, he's got to be very careful here, because if he turns the mirror on himself, well, he might not like what he sees. So if we go to the boxingscene.com article, so the headline is, Joshua got his name by beating an inactive beaten guy. So the quote, so he was talking to Declan Taylor. Joshua only got his name off beating Klitschko, a guy that had already beaten and coming off a 2-year layoff. That's why Fury gets the credibility. He beat the champ. He took the belt from the man. That's why he gets so much respect and credit from me. Further down, from the discussions we were having and what he was saying, he's a man of his word. The things that have happened to me trying to make a big fight, everybody could see what the situation was. At this point in time, people could see what was happening with Joshua. How low can you think of a person to degrade a man of my stature and what I've done for the sport, no matter what you think of me? 15 million and no percentage. When you gave a guy lower than me that has done nothing for the sport a percentage, but you want to give the baddest man on the planet no percentage, it don't get no clearer than that. They don't want the fight. So Deontay WIlder's statements to Declan Taylor, as reported by boxingscene.com. So I'm going to start with the sort of second part of the comments first. Okay, so if we go to the first comment, he's a man of his word, talking about Fury, he's made the fight. That's all well and good, but it was always going to be easier to negotiate with Fury, who really has nothing to lose. He doesn't actually have a physical belt at the moment. He's coming back from a long layoff, and I'll get to that later in respect of some of the above comments. But yeah, so it was going to be an easier situation than dealing with a guy in Anthony Joshua who was the A side, whereas Deontay WIlder was the A side in the Fury negotiations because he's got the strap, he's got the leverage over Fury, whereas Joshua's got 3 belts. He's a cash cow, and Deontay WIlder is not. So it was always going to be harder to make a Joshua fight. Do I agree that Deontay WIlder should have got a percentage? Absolutely. I think that would have been fair. But some of these things about degrade a man of my stature and what I've done for the sport, I mean, that's a bit over the top. There were 2 sides in this negotiation, and I don't care what anyone says. They were both sort of, playing at chicken with this one. They dragged this one out. They didn't want to blink first, and in the end, they ran out of runway. And you can make arguments on both sides about who was right and who was wrong. But there's 2 sides. They were both in this, and they were both trying to get what they wanted. And ultimately, they couldn't get it done. So it's not just one side is to blame and the other isn't. But these comments about when you gave a guy lower than me that has done nothing for the sport a percentage, that comment, that really gets me a bit angry, because he's using Joseph Parker as a pawn in the situation to get his point away about Anthony Joshua. We know he's not happy with Joshua, but in terms of Joseph Parker, well, Deontay WIlder and Joseph Parker are actually meant to be, on more than just casual acquaintances. They have contact. And after the Joshua fight, WIlder was on Twitter saying, "What a robbery. Wow, at Joe Boxer Parker. Great job, bro. Oh my God, don't apologize. You did nothing wrong." True champion. And then he's saying that he's done nothing for the sport. I think that's just ridiculous. Joseph Parker was a fellow champion. And actually, Joseph Parker has faced probably just as good as opposition as Deontay WIlder. Let's have a look at his record here. So he's faced Hughie Fury, Razvan Kajanu, Andy Ruiz Jr., Alexander Dimitrenko. There's a couple of good wins in there. Obviously, he lost to Dillian Whyte recently. Few circumstances in that fight. That was a good fight. He lost to Anthony Joshua. But the names of Fury, Ruiz, he beat Carlos Takam as well. I mean, those names are just as good as Chris Arreola, Artis Bilka, Johan Dorper, Eric Molina, Berman Stavern. That is the body of Gerald Washington. That is the body of work of Wilder's championship record. So sure, there's a few more names on there, but those are just middling opposition that Wilder has. And some of those names on Parker's record, Takam, for example, when, a few years ago when Joseph Parker fought Takam, better name than most of these on here. They're much of a muchness, and we can make a debate back and forward about who was better. Say, would Ruiz Jr. beat most of these guys that are on the championship record? Obviously, Luis Ortiz, this is Wilder's signature win. That's probably better than any of the wins on Parker's record. I'm going to give Wilder that. But in terms of the rest, I mean, he's saying that Joseph Parker has done nothing for the sport, and the records, they aren't too dissimilar. And I'm also going to say Joseph Parker has done a lot of good for the sport in New Zealand. He's revitalised interest in it. So for him to just sort of say that Joseph Parker has done nothing for the sport is just complete crap. And Deontay Wilder needs to give himself an uppercut for that, because it's just he's flapping his gums, letting a stupid statement come out of his mouth. He's degrading a guy that he actually said to Parker, and Parker was quoted in the media at the time after his loss to Anthony Joshua, that Wilder had been in contact, and Wilder said he would give him a fight. But yet now, in this story, he's saying that he's a guy lower than me that has done nothing for the sport. I just think that's actually a bit embarrassing for Deontay Wilder to actually have said that. As for the other stuff at the top, Joshua only got his name off beating Klitschko, a guy that had already been beaten and coming off a 2.5-year layoff. This is true. Klitschko was 41 and it was 18 months, not 2 years. But Anthony Joshua hasn't just beaten Klitschko. It's not the only name on his record. And for Deontay Wilder to imply that that's the only thing on Joshua's record of any note, of any consequence, is just plainly ridiculous. Let's go to the box record here. So what we do have is Dillian Whyte. He beat him in 2015. Dillian Whyte has subsequently gone on to get a couple of really good wins, Joseph Parker the best among them. He beat Charles Martin for the strap. And this is about the point of the conversation where Deontay Wilder fans will say, Anthony Joshua, he's a paper champion, beat Charles Martin. Sure, Charles Martin fought Glasgow, it was an open belt. But, the short memories here, because Berman Stavern fought Chris Arreola, and that was also an open belt. So Deontay Wilder, if you want to call Anthony Joshua a paper champion, is also a paper champion. Dominic Breazeale, that was a good win. Eric Molina, well, that's one of Wilder's title defences. Beat Vladimir Klitschko. Klitschko was coming off 18 months, but he looked pretty good in that fight. Carlos Takam, it was another good win, another solid win. Joseph Parker, it was a champion. He unified. And obviously he's facing Alexander Povetkin in September. That will be another good win if he can get it. Sure, Povetkin is getting a bit long in the tooth. It's his mandatory. He has to face him. But to basically imply that Klitschko is the only name on Joshua's record is devious, and it's just plainly ridiculous. And if you want to compare the record, Joshua's record against Wilder's record stacks up pretty well, and you could probably say that Joshua has the edge here. Apart from Ortiz, the rest of the wins Deontay Wilder has, middling opponents, the championship body of work. Whereas Joshua, he unified here with Joseph Parker. And arguably, Carlos Takam is as good a name, apart from Luis Ortiz, on Deontay Wilder's record. So some of these comments that Deontay Wilder is making, it does get me a bit frustrated, because I think, he's not really thinking about his own record, his own body of work. We know that he thinks he's the most dangerous man in the world, the best boxer that's ever lived. But effectively, 40 fights, and he only has one signature win. The rest of the championship work is just okay. And going back to the story, so what we have is he's making reference to beating Klitschko, but after the length of time, and Fury beat the man, he's the champ, took the belt from the man, etc. And that's why he gets the credit from him. So he's trying to take the credit away from Joshua because Klitschko had had a layoff, and that layoff was brought about by Fury, I might add. But he's trying to take the shine away from that win. Yet try to say that, he's going to get credit for fighting Tyson Fury. who has also had a massive layoff, way longer than Vladimir Klitschko, and he's only just getting in shape now. He wasn't in shape for most of it. Where Klitschko went through 2 training camps. He stayed in shape, he stayed ready because he wanted to get his belts back. And then obviously after that, he went into a fight with Joshua after Fury had, retired at the time. So this thing where Deontay Wilder is incessantly trying to take away the achievements and belittle the achievements of Anthony Joshua doesn't really work well, because it turns the microscope back on his own body of work, which until about a year ago, he was being called a cherry picker by a huge section of fans. People weren't happy with the opposition that he was facing. He was in a lot of fights that people didn't want to see against middling guys, and he was openly called a cherry picker by a huge number of fans. Obviously, that sort of rhetoric has died down a bit. He's fought Ortiz now. He's got some more respectability and more credibility. And, he's saying the right things and doing the right things now. But until the Ortiz fight, there were doubts about, how good was Deontay Wilder. A lot of people didn't really know and he had even spoken about not getting the respect that he thought he deserved. He was going on about always fighting the best, but that patently wasn't true. There were some other opportunities in his career that fell through that weren't really his fault because of PEDs. But to just say that his career hasn't taken off because of those incidents, that's not true. And part of the reason that he didn't have an uptake in fan base and also commercial value was because he was fighting these fights no one wanted to see. It's as simple as that. The guy does have a lot of swagger. He's very brash. He's good in the media. He speaks well. He looks like a champion. But now he's acting like a champion, and what's happening? The rewards are starting to come. He's facing the better opponents in the division, and now he's going to look to take the lineal status of Tyson Fury. If he keeps doing this, he's on the right path to making mega bucks and, solidifying his legacy. But he has to take these big fights. So when he does go on these rants and tangents about other people's career, we know he doesn't like Anthony Joshua, but if he goes after him and tries to say his record is nothing, that he's only fought the one guy, and by the way, that one guy was out of the ring for 2 years, well, he's going to have the microscope turned on himself. And Fury, he's been out of the ring for 2.5 years, and we don't know if he's going to be back to, full flight in 3 months. Because he hasn't been already. Sure, he wants the fight, and we're giving him credit for that, and it'll be a great name on Wilder's record. But Wilder just has to take the foot out of his mouth, because sometimes it's his worst enemy. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.